The salt-crusted lens cap slipped from my fingers for the third time that evening, clattering against the polished marble tiles of the Villa Tramontana's terrace. I cursed under my breath in English, then Italian, then that hybrid language I'd developed after 6 months of freelancing through Mediterranean resorts, scraping together enough euros to keep my veterinary degree dreams alive. My knees ached from crouching behind potted lemon trees for the past 2 hours, capturing candid shots of wealthy guests who pretended not to notice my presence. The camera strap had rubbed my neck raw, and my borrowed black dress, meant to help me blend into the sophisticated crowd, stuck to my lower back with perspiration, despite the evening breeze rolling in from the Tyrrhenian Sea. I bent to retrieve the lens cap, my fingers brushing against cool marble that still held the day's warmth. The terrace stretched before me like something from a film set, all ivory columns and cascading bougainvillea, strings of Edison bulbs casting warm pools of light across clusters of laughing guests. Beyond the ornate balustrade, the Sardinian coastline curved away into purple twilight, the water darkening from turquoise to indigo. This was my 7th event in 2 weeks at the resort. The photography gig paid triple what I earned at the veterinary clinic back in Milan, where I spent my actual passion hours, organizing files and sterilizing equipment, while the real vets did the work I dreamed of doing. Here, I was the invisible observer, the hired eye capturing memories for people who could afford to forget them. I adjusted my position behind a particularly robust lemon tree, its branches heavy with fruit that probably cost more to maintain than my monthly rent. Through my viewfinder, I tracked a woman in an emerald dress as she threw her head back in laughter, diamonds at her throat catching light like trapped stars. Click. A elderly couple dancing despite the lack of music, their movements synchronized by decades. Click. A group of young men in linen suits, raising crystal tumblers toward the darkening sky. Click. Then I saw him. He stood apart from the other guests, leaning against the far balustrade with deliberate casualness that somehow drew more attention than the loudest conversations. Tall, perhaps early 30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that cameras would either love or fear. His white linen shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, caught the breeze, and his gray eyes swept the terrace with the methodical assessment of someone cataloging exits rather than admiring architecture. I'd photographed enough wealthy men to recognize the type. Power sat differently on some shoulders, not loud or obvious but present, like expensive cologne you only noticed when standing too close. This man wore it like a second skin. My finger hovered over the shutter button. Something told me not to photograph him without permission. Some guests explicitly requested privacy, their names on lists my employer provided with stern warnings attached. But he wasn't moving toward the festivities, wasn't engaging with anyone. He was watching. And then, with the uncomfortable precision of prey recognizing a predator's gaze, I realized he was watching me. Heat crept up my neck despite the cooling evening air. I lowered the camera slowly, trying to appear professional rather than caught. His expression didn't change, but one corner of his mouth lifted almost imperceptibly. Not quite a smile. More like acknowledgement. I should have looked away. Should have busied myself with my equipment. Found another angle. Melted back into my hired invisibility. Instead, something reckless flickered to life in my chest. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe defiance against constantly making myself small in spaces like this. I held his gaze and raised one eyebrow in question. His almost smile widened fractionally. He pushed away from the balustrade with fluid economy of movement, heading not toward me, but toward the bar, where backlit bottles glowed like jewels. I exhaled breath I hadn't realized I was holding, and turned my attention back to safer subjects. The next hour passed in the familiar rhythm of event photography. I moved through the crowd like water, there but unnoticed, capturing moments between the moments people performed for cameras. A child tugging her mother's designer dress. A server's tired smile when he thought no one was looking. The way candlelight transformed ordinary faces into something painterly and strange. I was reviewing shots on my camera's small screen when a voice spoke near my ear. Accented Italian wrapped around deliberately casual English. "You have an interesting eye." I turned to find him standing closer than social convention usually allowed, close enough that I caught the scent of expensive cologne and something else beneath it. Leather, maybe. Or gunpowder, though that thought seemed absurd in this setting. "Thank you," I replied in Italian, keeping my tone professionally neutral despite my heart's sudden acceleration. "Though I'm just documenting what's already here." "No." He gestured toward my camera with a glass of amber liquid. "You find the truth hiding behind the performance. That woman there." He nodded toward the emerald dress. "You caught her when she thought no one was watching. When her smile dropped for just a second and something else showed through." I glanced at the image he referenced. He was right. Between perfectly composed shots, I'd captured a flicker of something raw. Maybe loneliness. Maybe calculation. "Most people prefer the performance," I said carefully. "Most people are fools." The bluntness startled a laugh from me before I could stop it. Immediately, I pressed my fingers to my lips, aware of breaching some unspoken protocol about laughing at guests' comments. But his gray eyes warmed slightly, pleased rather than offended. "You disagree?" "I think," I said, surprising myself with honesty, "that everyone's performing something, even the people who claim they're not." "Even you?" "Especially me." I gestured at my borrowed dress, my professional camera, the invisible barrier I maintained between myself and the wealthy crowd. "I'm performing competent invisibility." "You're failing spectacularly." Heat rose to my cheeks again, but this time I met it with the reckless thing still flickering in my chest. "Is that a professional assessment or a personal observation?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, there and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Careful, photographer. Questions like that have consequences." The Italian word for photographer, delivered with such precise diction, felt more intimate than it should have. I straightened my spine, reclaiming the 2 inches of height I'd lost by unconsciously shrinking under his attention. "I should get back to work," I said, not quite steady but close enough. "Of course." He stepped back just enough to restore proper distance. "But before you disappear into your professional invisibility again, I'm curious. What do you see when you look at me?" The question caught me off guard. Through my viewfinder, I saw danger and control, and something coiled tight beneath expensive tailoring. But standing here, close enough to notice the faint scar along his left jawline, I saw something else too. Loneliness, maybe, or the careful isolation of someone who'd chosen distance as armor. "I see someone who doesn't want to be here," I said finally. His expression shifted, genuine surprise replacing calculated charm. "You're observant." "It's my job." "No." He shook his head slowly. "Your job is pressing a button. This is something else." Before I could formulate a response, my phone vibrated with a message from Julia, the resort's event coordinator. 5 minutes until cake cutting. I needed to position myself near the main table. "I really do need to go," I said, already stepping back, already retreating into the safety of professional duty. "Wait." The single word stopped me. "Your name." I hesitated. Giving my name felt like crossing a line I didn't fully understand. But refusing seemed childish, theatrical in a way that would undermine my earlier boldness. "Iris. Iris." He repeated it like he was tasting wine, considering its qualities. "I'm Nico." "Nice to meet you, Nico." The formality felt absurd after our conversation, but I didn't know what else to say. "We'll see each other again," he said, not a question but a statement of fact. I wanted to argue, to point out that guests came and went while I remained invisible background, but something in his certainty made disagreement seem pointless. Instead, I nodded once and fled toward the safety of my camera, my professional distance, the familiar armor of being the observer rather than the observed. The cake cutting passed in a blur of flash photography and forced smiles. I captured the knife slicing through fondant, champagne toasts, the careful performance of wealth and celebration. But my hands shook slightly, and twice I had to delete shots where I'd unconsciously angled the lens to include him in the background, gray eyes still watching, still cataloging, still somehow finding me despite the crowd between us. When the event finally ended, I packed my equipment with mechanical efficiency, fingers moving through familiar routines while my mind replayed our conversation, searching for hidden meanings in every word. The terrace emptied gradually, guests drifting toward cars or rooms or wherever wealthy people went when the performance ended. I shouldered my camera bag and headed for the service entrance, the route staff used to maintain the illusion that places like this ran themselves. The corridor was blessedly cool after the terrace's warmth, fluorescent lights harsh after romantic Edison bulbs. Iris. I jumped, nearly dropping my bag. Nico stood in the corridor as if he'd materialized from shadows, still in his linen shirt, but with sleeves rolled to his elbows now, revealing forearms marked with what looked like old burns. "You shouldn't be back here," I said, reflexive concern making my voice sharp. "This area is staff only. I wanted to return this." He extended his hand. My lens cap rested in his palm. "You dropped it. Earlier." I stared at the small piece of plastic like it was something precious and dangerous. "You've been carrying that around all evening?" I considered keeping it. As a guarantee, you'd have to seek me out to retrieve it. His almost smile returned. "But I suspect you're stubborn enough to simply buy a replacement." "Probably," I admitted, taking the cap from his palm carefully, avoiding skin contact that suddenly seemed loaded with significance. "So instead, I'm asking directly. Have coffee with me tomorrow." Not a question, a request framed as statement, assuming acceptance. The reckless thing in my chest flared brighter. I should say no, should maintain professional boundaries, should recognize that whatever this was, it couldn't lead anywhere good for a girl from Milan trying to pay for veterinary school with borrowed dresses and freelance photography. "I work mornings," I heard myself say instead. "Pool photography. I'm free after 1. 2:00, the cafe by the marina." Still not asking, but I found I didn't mind. "How do you know I'll actually show up?" He leaned closer, close enough that I caught that scent again, leather and danger beneath expensive refinement. "Because you're as curious about me as I am about you, and because you're brave enough to admit it." Then he was gone, footsteps fading down the corridor before I could formulate a response. I stood alone under harsh fluorescent lights, clutching a lens cap like a talisman, my heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd be sensible. I'd send a polite message canceling, would avoid him for the remainder of his stay, would remember that I was here to work, to save money, to build a future that had nothing to do with gray-eyed men who looked at me like they could see past every performance, straight to something raw and true. But as I made my way to the staff quarters I shared with 3 other seasonal workers, as I lay awake listening to the Mediterranean's distant whisper, I knew I was lying to myself. I was going to that cafe, was going to see what happened when I stopped performing invisibility and let myself be seen. The thought terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. The morning sun turned the resort's infinity pool into liquid sapphire. I crouched at the shallow end, waiting for the perfect shot of a toddler in water wings, his mother hovering nearby with the anxious attention of someone who'd paid too much for this vacation to let anything go wrong. My camera felt heavier than usual, or maybe that was just the weight of anticipation pressing down on my chest. 2:00, the Marina Cafe. Nico's gray eyes holding mine in the staff corridor, promising nothing and everything at once. "Iris, Can you get one of him jumping in? The mother's voice pulled me back to professional focus. Of course, Signora. I adjusted my lens, tracked the child's gleeful leap, captured water diamonds scattering in sunlight. Click. The moment suspended forever in pixels and memory. I'd been photographing pool scenes for 3 hours when I felt it, that specific prickling awareness of being watched. My gaze swept the terrace automatically, cataloging guests sprawled on loungers, couples sharing tropical drinks, children shrieking with the particular pitch that only poolside joy produced. He sat at a table beneath a white umbrella, laptop open but clearly ignored, coffee growing cold while he watched me work. Not obviously, not in the creepy way some guests watched young staff. Just steady observation, like I was something worthy of study rather than scenery. Heat crawled up my neck despite the pool's cooling proximity. I turned deliberately back to my subjects, refusing to acknowledge his presence even as every nerve ending tracked his location with uncomfortable precision. The morning stretched into afternoon. I moved around the pool's perimeter, changing angles, adjusting for shifting light. He remained at his table, occasionally typing something, but mostly just existing in my peripheral vision, like a gravitational force I couldn't ignore. At 12:30, Julia appeared with the clipboard that governed my life at the resort. Iris, you're done early today. The afternoon photography is covered. Some VIP requested his own personal photographer for a private yacht excursion. My stomach dropped. Oh, that's good, I suppose. More time to edit photos. She gave me an odd look. You're disappointed about having free time? Are you feeling well? Fine, I lied, gathering my equipment with hands that wanted to shake. Just surprised, that's all. As I packed my camera into its protective case, I felt him approach before I saw him. The air changed, charged with that specific tension that had marked our first conversation. Iris. His voice carried just the right volume to be heard over poolside noise without drawing attention. I'm the VIP who requested the personal photographer. Unfortunately, there's been a change of plans. The yacht excursion is canceled. I turned slowly, finding him close enough to see water droplets on his collar from the pool's splash zone. That's unfortunate for you. Devastating. His mouth curved with amusement that didn't quite reach his eyes. I suppose I'll have to find alternative entertainment for the afternoon. Perhaps that cafe by the marina. 2:00. The presumption should have annoyed me, should have triggered my instinct to resist being managed, controlled, assumed. Instead, that reckless thing in my chest sparked hotter. I haven't decided if I'm going yet, I said, deliberately casual. Yes, you have. He stepped closer, just inside the boundary of appropriate distance. You decided last night, when you didn't immediately refuse. You decided this morning when you wore that dress instead of your usual work clothes. I glanced down at myself, at the sundress I'd borrowed from my roommate Elena, pale blue cotton that actually fit instead of hanging loose like my usual secondhand finds. Damn him for noticing. Maybe I just felt like wearing something different. Maybe. His gray eyes held mine with uncomfortable intensity. Or maybe you wanted to see what happens when you stop performing invisibility, when you let yourself be seen. The echo of my own thoughts from last night felt like invasion and intimacy tangled together. I opened my mouth to respond, to say something cutting and clever that would reestablish distance, but Julia's voice interrupted. Signor Tesaro, your driver called. He's waiting at the main entrance whenever you're ready. Tesaro. So now I had a surname to attach to those gray eyes, that dangerous almost smile. Nico Tesaro. Thank you, Julia. He didn't look away from me. Tell him I'll be there shortly. I'm just finishing an important conversation. After Julia retreated, I shouldered my camera bag with more force than necessary. You orchestrated this. The canceled yacht, the freed afternoon, everything. I created an opportunity. He reached out as if to touch my arm, then thought better of it, hand falling back to his side. What you do with it remains your choice. Does it? I challenged. Or did you already decide that too? Something flickered in his expression. Maybe surprise, maybe approval. You have a sharp tongue when you're not hiding behind your camera. And you have a habit of assuming you know me based on one conversation. Then prove me wrong. The challenge hung between us like suspended breath. Don't show up. Go back to your room, edit your photos, spend the afternoon being safely invisible. Or, he let the alternative dangle, unspoken, but heavy with implication. I should have walked away, should have recognized manipulation wrapped in charm, should have remembered every warning about powerful men and the damage they leave behind. But standing there in borrowed blue cotton, with chlorine scent in my hair, and my camera bag weighing down my shoulder, I couldn't remember why safety mattered more than the electric anticipation racing through my veins. 2:00, I said finally. But if you're late, I'm leaving. His smile widened into something genuine, transforming his face from dangerous to almost beautiful. I'm never late, Iris. He left then, striding across the terrace with that fluid confidence that parted crowds without effort. I stood alone by the pool, heart hammering against my ribs, already regretting and anticipating in equal measure. Elena found me in our shared room at 1:30, staring at my reflection with the critical eye usually reserved for composition through a viewfinder. The blue dress suddenly seemed too casual, too provincial, too obviously borrowed. You're nervous. She sprawled across her bed, dark curls still damp from her own shift-cleaning guest rooms. This is about that man from last night, yes? The one Julia says rented the presidential suite for a month. A month? I turned from the mirror. Who stays at a luxury resort for a month? Someone who can afford to rent out entire yachts for private photography sessions. Elena's grin was knowing. Someone who cancels them just to free up your afternoon. It's just coffee. Nothing is just coffee when a man looks at you the way Julia says he was looking at you this morning. Like you were the only person at the entire pool. I sat on my own bed, suddenly exhausted by anticipation. I don't know what I'm doing, Elena. He's clearly wealthy, clearly used to getting what he wants. And I'm a freelance photographer wearing your dress because I can't afford my own nice clothes. So? Elena sat up, expression fierce with sudden protectiveness. You're also brilliant and kind, and brave enough to leave everything you knew to chase your dreams. If he can't see that, then he's not worth your time. But if he can, she softened, then maybe stop hiding long enough to let him. Her words echoed Nico's from earlier. Stop performing invisibility. Let yourself be seen. At 1:55, I stood outside the Marina Cafe, salt air tangling my hair and doubt tangling my thoughts. Small boats bobbed in their slips, rigging chiming against masts like wind chimes. The cafe was modest by resort standards. Locals mixed with tourists. Plastic chairs and sun-faded umbrellas instead of pristine luxury. I almost turned back 3 times in the 30 seconds before I spotted him. He sat at a corner table, dressed more casually than last night, dark jeans and a white button-down with sleeves rolled to his elbows. Those burn scars I'd noticed yesterday were clearer now, old marks that spoke of close contact with fire or something equally unforgiving. When he saw me, he stood, the gesture so automatic it seemed like reflex rather than performance. You came. He pulled out a chair for me, the old-fashioned courtesy at odds with the modern setting. I said I would. I sat, hyper-aware of his proximity as he returned to his own seat. People say many things they don't mean. He signaled the waiter with subtle efficiency. What would you like? Espresso, please. After the waiter retreated, silence settled between us, not uncomfortable, but waited with unspoken questions. I studied his face in afternoon light, noting details my camera would love. The sharp jawline, the slight crookedness of his nose suggesting an old break, the way his gray eyes caught sunlight like polished steel. "You're doing it again," he said quietly. "What?" "Cataloging, observing, hiding behind professional assessment instead of engaging directly." The accuracy stung. Maybe that's who I am, the observer. No. He leaned forward, elbows on the small table. That's what you do. It's not who you are. Last night, when you challenged me in the corridor, when you raised your eyebrow instead of shrinking back, that was who you are. You don't know me well enough to make those distinctions. Then tell me. His intensity didn't waver. Tell me who Iris is when she's not performing competent invisibility. The waiter returned with our coffee, buying me a moment to gather scattered thoughts. The espresso was perfect, rich and bitter and grounding. I wrapped both hands around the small cup, needing something to hold on to. "I'm 21, I began, unsure why I was answering but unable to stop. "From Milan originally. I'm studying to be a veterinarian, which is absurdly expensive, so I take photography jobs wherever I can find them. I live in a room with 3 other seasonal workers. I own 2 dresses and both are borrowed. My camera cost more than everything else I own combined because it's the only thing that matters besides my education." He listened without interruption, gray eyes tracking every word like each one mattered. "I love animals more than people," I continued, the words coming faster now. "I'm better with wounded things than healthy ones. I cry at documentaries about rescue dogs, but not at romantic movies. I hate pretense and performance even though I engage in both constantly. And I don't understand what someone like you wants with someone like me beyond the obvious novelty." "The obvious novelty?" His eyebrow lifted. "The poor photography student, the fresh face in a sea of sophistication, the temporary entertainment before you move on to the next resort, the next distraction." Instead of offense, something like pain flickered across his features. "Is that truly what you think?" "I don't know what to think." I set down my espresso cup before my trembling hands betrayed me. "You appear out of nowhere. You watch me work. You manipulate my schedule. You look at me like—" I faltered. "Like what?" "Like I matter." The admission came out small, vulnerable, everything I tried not to be. The silence that followed felt enormous. A seagull cried overhead. Boat rigging chimed its endless percussion. The world continued its normal rotation while I sat exposed, having revealed more than I'd intended. "You do matter," Nico said finally, his voice carrying a roughness I hadn't heard before. "More than you know. More than I can explain sitting at a cafe in broad daylight." That sounds ominous. It's honest. He reached across the table, not quite touching my hand, but close enough that I felt the warmth of his skin. "I came to this resort to conduct business. Legitimate business involving property acquisition for horse breeding operations. I expected 2 weeks of tedious meetings and expensive meals with people I don't respect. Instead, I found you hiding behind lemon trees, capturing truth between performances, challenging me with raised eyebrows instead of submissive smiles." "I don't submit easily." His gray eyes flashed with something dangerous and thrilling. "I'm counting on it." Heat pooled low in my stomach, unfamiliar and unsettling. I pulled my hand back, needing distance from the intensity building between us. "Tell me about the horses," I said, desperate for safer ground. He accepted the deflection with grace, settling back in his chair. "I breed and trade thoroughbreds, mostly for racing, some for dressage. My family has owned land in Tuscany for generations, olive groves primarily, but I've converted much of it to stables and training facilities. That's why you're here, looking at property? Sardinia has excellent breeding stock. I'm considering acquisition." Something shifted in his expression. But I'm also here because I needed distance from complications on the mainland. What kind of complications? The kind that involve people expecting things I'm not willing to give. His vagueness felt deliberate. Business associates with different visions for the future. Family with traditional expectations. I wanted to press further, but something in his closed expression warned against it. Instead, I said, "Tell me about the horses. What draws you to them?" His face transformed, walls lowering as passion for his subject overtook caution. They're honest in ways people never are. A horse can't perform or pretend. When they trust you, it's real. When they're afraid, they show it. They demand authenticity because they can sense deception. Like you can. He smiled slightly. Perhaps. Or perhaps I've just spent too much time with creatures more honest than the company I usually keep. We talked for 2 hours. Coffee turned to lunch, casual conversation deepening into genuine exchange. He asked about my veterinary studies with surprising knowledge, revealing that he'd considered becoming a veterinarian himself before family obligations directed him elsewhere. I asked about the logistics of horse breeding, fascinated despite myself by the complexity of bloodlines and training protocols. "You should visit sometime," he said, as the afternoon sun began its decline toward evening. "The stables, I mean. See the horses. You'd appreciate them." "I'm in Sardinia. You're in Tuscany. For now." His gray eyes held mine with renewed intensity. "But I have business here for another 2 weeks, and I imagine we'll continue running into each other." "You imagine that, do you?" "I'm arranging it." His honesty was refreshing and terrifying. "I've instructed the resort to schedule me for events you're photographing. I've booked private sessions that will require your specific services. I've essentially guaranteed that we'll be in close proximity for the foreseeable future." The manipulation should have angered me, should have triggered every self-protective instinct I'd developed over 21 years of learning to guard vulnerability. Instead, I felt that reckless thing in my chest blaze into something bigger, something that pushed words past careful filters. What if I don't want to be arranged? His almost smile returned. "Then you'll tell me to stop. And I will. But I don't think you want that any more than I do." He was right, damn him. I didn't want distance or safety or the comfortable invisibility I'd cultivated so carefully. I wanted this. The electric anticipation. The sense of standing on a precipice deciding whether to jump. "One condition," I said finally. "No more manipulation. If you want to see me, ask directly. I'll decide honestly, but I won't be managed." Something like respect flickered in his gray eyes. "Agreed. Though I reserve the right to create opportunities you might not otherwise have." "Such as?" "Such as a private tour of a thoroughbred breeding operation tomorrow afternoon. The owner is someone I'm negotiating with. He's agreed to let you photograph his horses for your portfolio in exchange for professional shots of his champion mare." My heart jumped. Access to purebred horses, the kind I'd only seen in textbooks and dreams. Professional quality photos for my portfolio. The opportunity to combine my two passions in a way my current resort photography never allowed. That's manipulative. That's creating opportunity. He stood, extending his hand formally. "What do you say, Iris? Will you spend tomorrow afternoon photographing horses with me?" I looked at his extended hand, at the burn scars marking his forearms, at gray eyes that saw past every performance to something raw and true beneath. Every instinct warned caution. Every fiber of my being screamed yes. I placed my hand in his. "Tomorrow afternoon, but only because the horses deserve good photography." "Of course." His fingers closed around mine, warm and calloused, and sending electricity straight to my core. Only for the horses. We both knew I was lying, and somehow, that made it perfect. The breeding facility sat in Sardinia's interior, where tourism surrendered to agriculture, and the Mediterranean's azure gave way to dusty olive groves. Nico's car, a sleek black Range Rover that whispered money without shouting it, navigated the winding road with practiced ease, while I pressed my forehead against the cool window, watching landscape transform from coastal luxury to rural authenticity. Nervous? His voice pulled me back from scattered thoughts. Excited, I corrected, then admitted, maybe both. The facility appeared around a bend, white stucco buildings arranged around paddocks where horses grazed in afternoon sun. Nothing ostentatious, just clean lines and obvious care, the kind of operation that prioritized animals over impression. Marco Santini met us at the main stable, a weathered man in his 60s with calloused hands and kind eyes. He greeted Nico with familiar warmth that suggested history beyond business transactions. "This is Iris." Nico introduced me with his hand at the small of my back, possessive and protective in equal measure. "The photographer I mentioned." "Welcome, Signorina." Marco's handshake was firm. "Any friend of Nico's is welcome here, though I warn you my horses are terrible models. They refuse to hold still." I liked him immediately. The best subjects never do. He led us through the facility, explaining bloodlines and breeding protocols while I photographed equipment, architecture, the interplay of light through stable doors. But my real focus waited in the far paddock, a magnificent chestnut mare whose coat gleamed like burnished copper. "Luna Rosa," Marco said with obvious pride. "Red Moon. She won 2 derbies before I retired her to breeding. Best horse I've ever owned. Through my viewfinder, she was perfection. I spent 20 minutes capturing her movement, the powerful grace of muscles beneath that copper coat, sunlight catching her mane as she tossed her head with aristocratic disdain." "You're good at this," Nico observed quietly, standing close enough that I felt his warmth despite the afternoon heat. "Photography?" "Reading them. Understanding what they're showing you beyond the surface." I lowered my camera, finding his gray eyes watching me with the same intensity I'd directed at the mare. "Horses are easier than people. They don't hide what they feel. Some people don't either." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face with fingers that lingered just slightly too long. "When they forget to perform." Heat that had nothing to do with Mediterranean sun spread through my chest. Before I could respond, Marco called us to the main stable where he'd prepared lunch. Simple bread and cheese and wine on a table overlooking the paddocks. We ate and talked, conversation flowing easily between horse breeding and veterinary science, between Nico's Tuscan operations and my Milan studies. Marco shared stories about Luna Rosa's racing career, about the patience required to earn a horse's trust, about the responsibility inherent in creating life through careful breeding. "Your generation understands this better than mine did," he said to me, refilling my wine glass. "We saw horses as tools, investments. You see them as partners, individuals. It's better." "Not all of our generation feels that way," I countered, thinking of classmates who viewed veterinary medicine purely through financial lens. "But you do." Marco's observation carried weight. "Nico, she has the instinct, the thing that can't be taught." Something passed between the two men, a communication beyond words that made me feel simultaneously included and excluded. After lunch, I photographed Luna Rosa extensively, capturing every angle, every expression, building a portfolio piece that would demonstrate technical skill and artistic vision. Nico stayed close but not intrusive, occasionally offering suggestions about angles or lighting that revealed surprising photographic knowledge. "You know this stuff," I accused during a break, reviewing images on my camera's screen. "I took a course once, photography basics." He shrugged. "Thought it might be useful for documenting horses." "And was it?" His almost smile appeared. "Not really. I'm better with subjects that don't require lenses between us." The implication hung heavy in the air between us, charged with the tension that had been building since yesterday's cafe conversation. I turned back to my camera, needing the safety of professional focus. We left the facility as evening approached, Marco embracing us both with genuine warmth and making me promise to send him the photos once edited. The drive back began in comfortable silence, windows down to catch cooling breeze, landscape blurring past in gold and green. "Thank you for today," I said as we descended toward the coast. "Access like that, with a horse like Luna Rosa, it's beyond what I could arrange myself. You earned it through your skill." Nico kept his eyes on the winding road. "Marco doesn't allow just anyone to photograph his champion. He saw what I saw, your genuine respect for the animals. Still, I know you arranged it for me." "I created opportunity," he corrected with slight amusement. "You executed it beautifully." We stopped at a scenic overlook where the road curved above the sea, distant waves catching sunset gold. Nico parked, and we stood at the stone railing, watching light transform water into liquid amber. "Can I ask you something?" The question escaped before caution could stop it. "Always." "That first night at the event, you said I had an interesting eye, but you were watching me long before I photographed anything. Why?" He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice carried unusual vulnerability. "Because you were the only person there who wasn't performing. Everyone else wore masks, played roles, projected whatever version of themselves they wanted the world to see. But you." He turned to face me fully. "You were just yourself. Tired, determined, slightly annoyed at your borrowed dress. Real. Maybe I was performing too. Maybe invisibility was my mask. No." He reached out, fingers gentle against my jaw, turning my face toward his. "Invisibility was your protection. There's a difference." His thumb traced my cheekbone, the touch setting every nerve ending alight. We stood close enough that I caught that scent again, leather and danger and something uniquely him. My heart hammered against my ribs, anticipation and apprehension tangled together. "Iris." My name on his lips felt like permission and warning at once. "If I kiss you right now, everything changes. Maybe I want things to change. You don't understand what you're saying. Then explain it to me." The challenge came out breathless but defiant. Instead of answering, he closed the distance between us, his mouth finding mine with surprising gentleness. The kiss started soft, questioning, giving me space to retreat. But I didn't retreat. I leaned into him, hands finding his shoulders, opening to his exploration with the same reckless certainty that had characterized every interaction since we met. He deepened the kiss, one hand tangling in my hair, while the other pulled me flush against him. I tasted wine on his tongue, felt the controlled power in his frame, surrendered to sensation with abandon I didn't recognize but refused to question. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Everything changes now," he repeated, voice rough. "I know. No, you don't." He pulled back enough to meet my eyes, his gray gaze darker now, stormy. "But you will." The cryptic warning should have frightened me, should have triggered all my carefully cultivated self-preservation. Instead, it only made me want him more, want to understand the shadows behind those gray eyes, want to be the person who saw past his performances the way he saw past mine. We drove back to the resort in charged silence, his hand finding mine across the console, fingers intertwining like they belonged there. When we reached the main entrance, he walked me to the staff quarters like some strange inversion of normal dating protocols. "Have dinner with me tomorrow," he said at the door to my building. "Are you asking or arranging?" His smile was genuine. "Asking, though I've already made reservations at the resort's best restaurant just in case." Presumptuous. Hopeful. He lifted my hand to his lips, the gesture old-fashioned and devastating. "Say yes, Iris." Standing there with my hand in his, still tasting him on my lips, still feeling the imprint of his body against mine, I couldn't remember why I'd ever considered saying no. "Yes." His smile transformed his face into something beautiful and dangerous. "Good. 7 o'clock. Wear something that makes you feel powerful. I only have borrowed dresses. Then borrow the one that makes you feel like you could conquer the world." He released my hand with obvious reluctance. "Because tomorrow, I want to see you with all your armor dropped, all your performances abandoned, just Iris in her full truth." The prospect terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. After he left, I stood in the cooling evening, fingers pressed to lips that still tingled from his kiss, and wondered what I'd set in motion. Inside, Elena took one look at my face and squealed. "You kissed him." He kissed me. The distinction felt important. And she bounced on her bed with uncontained excitement. And everything changed. I sank onto my own bed, suddenly exhausted by the emotional intensity of the day. "Elena, I don't know what I'm doing. He's clearly wealthy, clearly connected in ways I don't understand. And I'm falling for him anyway." Her expression softened with rare seriousness. "Then be careful, Kara. But also be brave. Sometimes the best things come from the scariest jumps." That night, I lay awake editing photos of Luna Rosa, each image capturing the mare's power and grace and honest beauty. But my mind kept returning to the overlook, to Nico's warning, to the feel of his mouth on mine, and the certainty that I'd crossed a line from which there was no return. Everything changes now. I knew he was right. I just didn't know yet what shape those changes would take, or how much they would cost. The borrowed dress was deep red, practically burgundy, with a neckline that revealed more collarbone than I usually dared, and a hem that swirled just above my knees. Elena's roommate had worn it to a wedding once, and forgotten it existed in the back of our shared closet, until I mentioned needing something powerful. "You look like you could break hearts," Elena said, helping me with the zipper. "I'm more worried about having mine broken." She turned me toward the mirror. The woman reflected there looked unfamiliar, confident in a way photography student Iris never managed. The dress did something to my posture, straightening my spine and squaring my shoulders like armor made of silk. "Don't be late," Elena warned as I gathered my small purse. "And text me if you need extraction. I'll fake an emergency." Nico waited in the resort's lobby, dressed in charcoal slacks and a white dress shirt with the top 3 buttons undone, revealing the strong column of his throat. When he saw me, something flashed in his gray eyes, hunger and appreciation, and something deeper I couldn't name. "You're stunning," he said simply, offering his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. "You clean up well yourself." The restaurant occupied the resort's highest floor, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of coastline and Mediterranean sunset. The maitre d' led us to a private corner table that felt simultaneously exposed and intimate, visible to other diners but separated by enough space to create illusion of isolation. "This is too much," I whispered, as Nico held my chair. "It's barely enough." He took his own seat, gray eyes never leaving my face. "You deserve restaurants like this every night, not just borrowed moments between photography shifts." The compliment made heat rise to my cheeks. "I'm happy with my life." "Are you?" It wasn't challenge, but genuine question. Or have you convinced yourself to be content with less than you deserve? Before I could formulate response, a sommelier appeared with wine recommendations that meant nothing to me beyond impressive-sounding French regions. Nico ordered with easy authority, then turned his attention back to me with focus that made the rest of the room disappear. "Tell me about your family," he said as our wine arrived. "Not much to tell, only child. My parents run a small restaurant in Milan, nothing fancy but steady. They thought my veterinary dreams were impractical, suggested I study business instead. I swirled wine in my glass, watching candlelight catch liquid ruby. We don't talk much anymore. Because you chose your path over their approval. Because I refused to be practical when I could be passionate. The admission came easier than expected. What about you? You mentioned family expectations. His expression shuddered slightly. My father built our family business from nothing. Olive groves initially, then expansion into wine, properties, various ventures. He expected me to follow his exact blueprint. But you chose horses instead. I chose authenticity over dynasty. He took a long drink of wine. It created complications. My father died disappointed, and my younger brother now runs operations I was supposed to inherit. The pain beneath his controlled tone made my chest ache. I'm sorry. Don't be. I made my choice knowing the cost. His gray eyes found mine with renewed intensity. The horses don't lie, don't perform, don't expect me to be anyone other than who I am. It's worth every sacrifice. Our food arrived, beautifully plated dishes that were more art than sustenance. We ate slowly, conversation flowing between bites, touching on everything and nothing. He told me about training young horses, about the patience required to earn trust without breaking spirit. I told him about my favorite veterinary rotation, working with rescue animals whose resilience humbled and inspired me. You light up when you talk about them, Nico observed, setting down his fork to focus entirely on me. The way your eyes brighten, your hands move, you become even more beautiful. I'm not beautiful. The protest was automatic. Years of being invisible, making compliments hard to accept. You are. He leaned forward slightly, not in the obvious way that photographs well or turns heads in crowds. Beautiful in the way truth is beautiful. In your honesty, your passion, your refusal to perform for anyone's comfort, including your own. The intensity of his regard made breathing difficult. I reached for my wine glass, needing something to do with hands that wanted to reach for him. Iris. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite surrounding chatter. I need to tell you something. About who I am, what I do beyond horse breeding. Warning bells rang distant in my mind. Okay. He was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh words carefully. My family's business, the operations my brother now runs, they exist in gray areas. Legal primarily, but touching edges of things less legitimate. And while I've separated myself from direct involvement, some associations remain unavoidable. You're saying you're connected to organized crime. I'm saying I come from that world even though I've chosen to live outside it. He held my gaze steadily. The horses are entirely legitimate, clean income from clean sources. But people assume, because of my surname, that I operate the same way my father did. Do you? Not anymore. The answer came firm and immediate. But the reputation persists. And there are individuals who believe I should maintain family traditions, who create pressure for me to return to operations I've deliberately abandoned. The confession should have sent me running, should have triggered every self-preservation instinct. Instead, I found myself asking, is that the complication you mentioned? Why you needed distance from the mainland? Partly. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. There's a woman, Isabella, daughter of a business associate who believes our families should merge through marriage. It's a traditional arrangement I've refused repeatedly, but she and her father are persistent. Jealousy flared hot and unexpected in my chest. Is she here? In Sardinia? No. He reached across the table, fingers finding mine. She's on the mainland, finally accepting my refusal. I came here partly to establish distance, to make my position absolutely clear. And then you met me, And then I met you. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the touch sending electricity up my arm. Everything changed. Suddenly, I wasn't hiding from complications. I was pursuing something real for the first time in years. The waiter appeared to clear our plates, breaking the moment's intensity. When he retreated, Nico stood and extended his hand. "Walk with me." We left the restaurant, descending through the resort to the private beach where waves whispered against sand and moonlight painted everything silver. My borrowed heels dangled from one hand while I walked barefoot, feeling cool sand between my toes, the hem of my red dress swirling around my calves. "This is better," I said, breathing in salt air and freedom. The restaurant was beautiful, but too formal. Noted for future reference. Nico had rolled his pants to mid-calf, expensive fabric given to practicality without hesitation. Though I enjoy seeing you in settings that match your beauty. We walked in comfortable silence, waves providing percussion to our footsteps. The resort glowed behind us, distant and unreal, while ahead stretched darkness and possibility. "Can I ask you something?" Nico stopped walking, turning to face me with moonlight catching his gray eyes. "And will you answer honestly, without performing confidence or indifference?" "I'll try." "What are you afraid of? Specifically with me, with this?" He gestured between us. "What keeps you from fully surrendering to what's building here?" The question caught me off guard with its directness. I stared at dark waves, gathering thoughts scattered by wine and moonlight and proximity. "I'm afraid of losing myself," I admitted finally. "You're overwhelming, Nico. Your confidence, your resources, your ability to arrange reality around your preferences. I'm afraid that being with you means disappearing into your orbit, becoming an accessory rather than a partner." "And if I promised that would never happen?" "You can't promise that." I turned to face him fully. "Because you don't understand what it's like to be me. To scrape together rent payment by payment, to wear borrowed dresses, to be invisible by necessity rather than choice. Your world is so different from mine that I don't know how to exist in it without losing the things that make me who I am." He studied me for a long moment, expression unreadable in moonlight. Then he stepped closer, hands finding my waist with gentle possession. "What if I don't want you to exist in my world?" His voice was low, intense. "What if I want to exist in yours? To learn invisibility, to understand scraping and struggling, to see reality through your eyes instead of mine? That's not how power dynamics work." "Then we change them." He pulled me closer, until our bodies touched with electric awareness. We create something new. Not my world or yours, but ours. Built from equal parts struggle and privilege, invisibility and exposure. You make it sound simple. It's terrifying. His forehead touched mine. But I'm willing to be terrified if it means having you. All of you. Not the performed version, but the raw truth underneath. I tilted my head back, searching his face for deception or performance. Found only honesty that matched my own vulnerability. "If I do this," I whispered, "if I surrender to this thing between us, you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise you'll tell me the truth. About your family, your business, the gray areas you mentioned. I can handle danger and complication, but I can't handle being lied to." His hands tightened on my waist. "I promise. Complete honesty, even when it's ugly. And you have to let me keep being me. Keep taking photography jobs. Keep studying. Keep existing outside your arrangements and orchestrations. I'll create opportunities, not cages." His almost smile appeared. "Though I can't promise not to be occasionally overbearing about your safety and happiness. I can live with occasional overbearing." The smile widened into something genuine and beautiful. Then we have an agreement? Instead of answering with words, I closed the remaining distance between us, kissing him with the certainty that had been building since our first conversation. His response was immediate and consuming, hands tangling in my hair, pulling me flush against his body with barely restrained hunger. We kissed like drowning people finding air, like truth finally acknowledged, like surrender and victory tangled together. The borrowed dress probably suffered in the sand. My carefully arranged hair definitely fell from its pins, and I couldn't bring myself to care about anything beyond the feel of his mouth on mine, his hands claiming my body, the sound of waves and heartbeats creating symphony around us. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured against my lips. "Not for performance or expectation. Just stay. Nico, just sleep." He kissed the corner of my mouth gently. "Let me hold you while you rest. Let me wake up knowing you're real and not something I imagined." The request was more intimate than seduction would have been. I should have refused, should have maintained boundaries and proper distance. Instead, I found myself nodding, saying yes to this man who saw past all my performances to something raw and true beneath. We walked back to the resort hand in hand, sand-covered and wind-blown and perfectly content. In his suite, the presidential one that Marco had mentioned, he gave me one of his shirts to sleep in and didn't comment when it fell to mid-thigh, enormous on my smaller frame. We lay together in the massive bed, his arms around me, my back against his chest, fitting together like pieces designed specifically for this configuration. Outside, waves provided distant percussion. Inside, his heartbeat against my shoulder blade created different rhythm entirely. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "For what?" "For being brave enough to let me see you, the real you." I laced my fingers through his where they rested against my stomach. "Thank you for looking." Sleep claimed us tangled together, moonlight painting the room silver, the future uncertain, but the present perfect in its honesty. Morning arrived with Mediterranean sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the disorienting realization that I'd woken in Nico's arms, in his bed, in the presidential suite that probably cost more per night than my monthly rent. He was already awake, propped on one elbow watching me with expression that mixed tenderness and possession. His hair was mussed from sleep, making him look younger, less controlled, achingly human. "You're staring," I mumbled, voice rough with sleep. "You're beautiful when you wake, all soft edges and honest confusion." He traced my jawline with gentle fingers. "Though I suspect you're about to panic and run." I should get back to staff quarters before Elena sends a search party. "Stay." He pulled me closer, tucking my head beneath his chin. "Just a few more minutes." I let myself relax into his warmth, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his heartbeat against my cheek. These stolen moments felt precious and fragile, like morning mist that would burn away under scrutiny. "I have pool photography at 10, I said finally, reluctantly pulling away. "If I'm late, Julia will actually send people looking. Then I'll make sure you're not late." He kissed my forehead before releasing me. "But tonight, have dinner with me again. Something less formal. Just us and food that doesn't require 3 forks. "That sounds perfect." The walk back to staff quarters in yesterday's red dress felt like performing the ultimate walk of shame. Except I felt no shame. Only contentment that persisted despite knowing eyes tracking my path. Elena was waiting, of course, bouncing with barely contained excitement. "Tell me everything," she demanded the moment the door closed. We talked, walked on the beach. I stayed over. I pulled the dress over my head, grateful for comfortable clothes. Nothing happened beyond sleeping. That's almost more intimate. Elena's knowing look made heat rise to my cheeks. "Iris, are you falling for him?" Probably. The admission felt simultaneously terrifying and liberating. Is that completely insane? Maybe. She hugged me quickly. But the best things usually are. The next week passed in a blur of stolen moments between professional obligations. Nico was true to his word about not arranging my schedule, but we still found each other constantly. Morning coffee before my pool shift. Afternoon walks through olive groves. Dinners at the small local restaurants where tourists never ventured, and the food came from family recipes rather than expensive imported ingredients. He showed me his world piece by careful piece. Photos of his Tuscan stables, the rolling hills and cypress trees, creating landscapes straight from Renaissance paintings. Videos of young horses learning to trust human handlers, their gradual transformation from skittish to confident under patient training. Stories about individual animals, their personalities and quirks, told with the affection most people reserve for family. I showed him mine too, my cramped student apartment in Milan through phone photos, laughing at his carefully controlled expression when he saw my kitchen that was really just a hot plate and mini fridge. My favorite veterinary textbooks, pages dog-eared and annotated with passionate marginalia. The rescue dog I'd fostered briefly last year before school demands made it impossible. A 3-legged mutt named Dante who'd trusted me enough to sleep on my bed, despite obvious history of abuse. You saved him, Nico observed, studying the photo of Dante's trusting eyes. Just temporarily. Someone else adopted him permanently. But you gave him the foundation, showed him trust was possible. His gray eyes found mine with uncomfortable intensity. That's a rare gift, Iris. The ability to heal wounded things. The conversation felt weighted with subtext I couldn't quite decode. On the 8th day, everything shifted again. I was photographing an afternoon pool event when Julia approached with her clipboard and worried expression. Iris, there's someone asking for you at the main desk. A woman. She's quite insistent. Confused, I followed Julia to the lobby where a stunning brunette waited, designer sunglasses pushed atop perfectly coiffed hair, her posture radiating wealth and barely contained irritation. You must be Iris, she said in Italian carrying distinct Milan accent. I'm Isabella Conti. I believe you've been spending time with my fiancé. The word fiancé hit like physical blow. I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. No mistake. Her smile was ice. Nico Tesaro and I have an understanding. A business arrangement between our families that he seems to have forgotten during his vacation. He told me he refused your father's proposal. He tells everyone that. She removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes hard as gemstones. But actions speak louder than words, don't they? And his actions include maintaining an apartment in my building, attending family functions as my partner, and accepting my father's business investments in his precious horses. Each statement felt calculated to wound. I don't believe you. Call him then. Ask him directly. Isabella's confidence never wavered. Or better yet, ask him about the property deal he's negotiating here. Who do you think is funding it? My father. With the understanding that Nico and I will merge our families as his father always wanted. My phone felt heavy in my pocket. I wanted to pull it out, to demand answers, but doing so in front of Isabella felt like weakness I couldn't afford. Why are you telling me this? I asked instead. Because you're a complication he doesn't need right now. Her expression softened into something almost sympathetic. Look, you seem nice enough. But you're 21, working photography jobs to pay for school. Nico is 31 with family obligations and business complexities you can't possibly understand. Whatever fantasy you've been enjoying here, it ends when vacation ends. That's for him to decide, not you. Is it? She stepped closer, voice dropping. He hasn't told you everything, has he? About his family's real business, about why he needed to leave Milan so suddenly, about the people his father owed money to before he died. He told me about the gray areas. Isabella laughed, sharp and bitter. Gray areas? That's diplomatic. Did he tell you about the horse racing scandal? The fixed races his father organized? The illegal betting operations? That's why Nico fled to legitimate breeding, to escape the investigation that's still ongoing. The information came too fast, too targeted. Each revelation designed to undermine the foundation of trust we'd been building. I think you should leave, I said, forcing steel into my voice despite trembling hands. I'm staying at the resort too. Presidential suite, same floor as Nico. Her smile was knife-sharp. We have dinner reservations tonight. You should ask him about it. She left in a cloud of expensive perfume and malicious satisfaction, leaving me standing in the lobby with my camera hanging heavy around my neck and my carefully constructed happiness crumbling like sandcastles against incoming tide. I made it back to the pool on autopilot, mechanically photographing guests while my mind raced through everything Isabella had said, searching for lies mixed with truth. The apartment in her building could be explained. The business investments could be legitimate. But the investigation, the scandal, the deliberate omission of crucial details despite his promise of honesty, that felt like betrayal. At 6 o'clock, I finished my shift and found a text from Nico waiting. Dinner tonight? Pick you up at 7. My fingers trembled as I typed back. We need to talk. You're sweet. Now. His response was immediate. Come up. I'm here. The elevator ride to the presidential floor felt endless. I rehearsed confrontations in my head, practiced staying calm and rational, reminded myself to listen before judging. But when he opened the door, worry clear in his gray eyes, all my preparation evaporated. Isabella was here, I said without preamble. She told me some very interesting things about your family business and your engagement. His jaw tightened. I'm not engaged to Isabella. That's a lie her father perpetuates to pressure me. But you do have an apartment in her building. You do attend functions with her. You do accept her father's money for your operations. Yes. He didn't deny any of it. But all of that has explanations if you'll let me give them. Then explain. I crossed my arms, needing the physical barrier. And don't leave anything out this time. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and resignation mixing. Come in, please. This isn't a conversation for hallways. Inside his suite, he poured himself whiskey and offered me wine I refused. Standing by those floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Mediterranean, backlit by sunset, he looked simultaneously powerful and vulnerable. My father was involved in illegal racing operations. He began without preamble. Fixed races, illegal betting, money laundering through purse winnings. I didn't know the full extent until after he died, when investigators started asking questions. That's when I discovered the empire I was supposed to inherit was built on crime. So, you left. I created distance, sold my shares in his operations to my brother, used the money to buy land in Tuscany, started breeding horses legitimately. He took a long drink. But severing family ties completely isn't possible when your surname carries that history. People still assume, still expect. Including Isabella's father. Especially him. Nico turned to face me directly. Conti and my father had arrangements. When I refused to continue them, Conti suggested merging families through marriage would preserve the relationship. I've refused repeatedly, but he's persistent. The apartment Isabella mentioned belongs to my brother, but it's in a building Conti owns, so she sees me there during family obligations and assumes connection that doesn't exist. And his money funding your Sardinia acquisition? That's where it gets complicated. He set down his glass with careful precision. I did accept Conti's investment, but on legitimate terms with legal contracts. I thought I could maintain business relationship without personal entanglement. I was wrong. He and Isabella are using that financial connection to claim deeper ties. The explanation felt honest, but incomplete. What did you mean by people your father owed money to before he died? Isabella made it sound dangerous. His expression darkened. My father died owing money to organizations that don't forgive debt. They approached me about assuming those obligations. I refused. That's partly why I came here, to establish distance while my lawyers handle negotiations. So there are dangerous people looking for you. Looking for money they believe they're owed. But my lawyers are making it clear those debts died with my father. He moved toward me slowly, like approaching a skittish horse. Iris, I should have told you all of this sooner. I promised honesty, and I failed to deliver complete truth. That's on me. Yes, it is. Anger and hurt warred in my chest. You let me fall for you while hiding the fact that you're connected to criminal investigations and dangerous debts, and a woman who thinks she's your fiancé. I'm not connected to investigations. I'm distancing myself from them. The debts are being legally resolved, and Isabella is delusional, not my fiancé. He reached for my hands, holding them gently when I didn't pull away. But you're right. I should have laid all of this out before things got serious between us. Why didn't you? Because I'm selfish. His honesty was brutal. I wanted this. You. The way you see me as just Nico, not as my father's son or my family's legacy. I wanted to exist in the space we created before reality complicated it. Reality is always there, Nico. Ignoring it doesn't make it disappear. I know. He pressed his forehead to mine, eyes closing. I know. And I'm sorry. But please don't walk away because I was too much of a coward to be fully honest from the beginning. I should have pulled back. Should have demanded time to process. Space to think clearly without his proximity clouding judgment. Instead, I found myself asking the question that mattered most. Are you in danger? Real, physical danger from these people your father owed? Not immediate danger. My lawyers are handling it. He opened his eyes, gray gaze holding mine. But I won't lie and say it's completely resolved. There's always risk when you refuse powerful people. And Isabella? Is a complication I'm ending permanently. I'll make it clear to both her and her father that there will never be anything between us, business or personal. The conviction in his voice felt real, but trust, once cracked, required more than words to repair. I need time, I said finally, stepping back from his embrace. To think about all of this, to decide if I can handle the complications you come with. Pain flashed in his eyes, but he nodded. I understand. Take whatever time you need. I'll be here. I left his suite feeling bruised and confused, my phone already ringing with Elena's concerned call. That night, I told her everything while she plied me with wine and outrage in equal measure. The question is, she said after hearing the full story, can you live with his past? Because men like him, they don't come without baggage. The real question is whether the present and future are worth carrying that weight. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while my roommate slept, I kept returning to the same truth. Despite everything, despite the lies of omission and the dangerous complications, I was still falling. The question was whether I'd hit bottom or learn to fly. 3 days passed in careful avoidance. I took early morning and late evening photography shifts, times when Nico wouldn't reasonably be at the pool or restaurants. I threw myself into editing work, building my portfolio with the Luna Rosa photos that had turned out even better than hoped. I existed in the comfortable numbness of routine, not thinking, just doing. But on the 4th morning, Marco Santini called my phone directly. Signorina Iris, I hope you don't mind. Nico gave me your number. His warm voice carried concern. I have an emergency. Luna Rosa, she's in distress. The vet I usually use is on the mainland and can't get here for hours. Nico mentioned you're studying veterinary medicine. I know it's presumptuous, but is there any chance? I'll be there in 30 minutes. Professional instinct overrode personal turmoil. What are her symptoms? Sweating, pawing the ground, won't eat. Started 2 hours ago and getting worse. Possible colic. Keep her walking if you can. Don't let her roll. I'm leaving now. I grabbed my basic veterinary kit, the one I'd assembled from school supplies, and kept religiously updated, and ran for the staff parking lot where Elena's borrowed scooter waited. The drive to Marco's facility felt endless, my mind racing through differential diagnoses and treatment options, while simultaneously dreading the inevitable encounter with Nico. He was there when I arrived, standing outside Luna Rosa's stall with Marco, both men's faces etched with worry. Our eyes met briefly before I focused on what mattered. Show me. The mare was indeed in distress, sides heaving, eyes rolling with pain. I moved slowly, talking softly, letting her smell my hands before touching. Marco was right about colic, but I needed to determine severity. Do you have a stethoscope? I asked Marco. In the office. I'll get it. While he ran, I continued my gentle examination, checking vitals, assessing the mare's distress level. Nico watched from outside the stall, not interfering but present, his gray eyes tracking every movement. Marco returned with the stethoscope, and I listened carefully to Luna Rosa's gut sounds, relief flooding through me at what I heard. Gas colic, not impaction. She needs to keep moving and we need to monitor closely, but this should resolve with conservative treatment. Thank God. Marco sagged against the stall door. What do we do? I spent the next 3 hours managing Luna Rosa's care, administering the limited medications I had in my kit, keeping her moving when she wanted to lie down, monitoring her vitals with obsessive frequency. Gradually, painfully, she improved. The sweating decreased, her gut sounds normalized, and finally she showed interest in food again. She's through the worst, I announced, exhausted but satisfied. But she needs monitoring for the next 24 hours, and you should still have your regular vet examine her. You saved her. Marco hugged me with surprising strength. Thank you, Iris. Thank you. I just did what any veterinarian would do. You did it with love. He pulled back, eyes suspiciously bright. Luna Rosa knew she could trust you. That matters more than technical skill. After Marco left to make calls, I found myself alone in the stable with Nico, who'd stayed through all 3 hours without complaint or interference. Luna Rosa dozed peacefully now, the crisis past, leaving only awkward silence between us. That was impressive, he said quietly. Watching you work, you became someone else. So certain, so capable. That's who I really am. I stroked Luna Rosa's neck gently. The photographer, the invisible girl, that's the performance. This is truth. I know. He moved closer, still maintaining careful distance. I've watched you with every animal we've encountered. You transform. It's beautiful. Don't. I turned to face him. Don't use compliments to smooth over the fact that you lied to me. I omitted. There's a difference. Not when you promise complete honesty. He was quiet for a long moment, gray eyes searching my face. You're right. And I can't take that back or fix it with pretty words. All I can do is promise to do better moving forward. If there is a moving forward? Is there? The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in my chest. Because these last 3 days without you have been hell, Iris. I've respected your need for space, but I can't keep pretending I'm fine with it. I'm not fine. I'm miserable. Good. The word came out harsher than intended. You should be. I am. He stepped closer, close enough that I caught his scent. But I'm also in love with you. Completely, terrifyingly in love. And I don't know how to fix this except to keep proving that I'm worth the risk. The confession stole my breath. Nico, let me finish. His hands found my shoulders, gentle but desperate. I've ended all business dealings with Conti, completely severed the relationship, even though it means losing significant investment. I've had my lawyers draft a formal statement to Isabella and her father, making it absolutely clear there will never be anything between us, and I've hired a firm to handle my father's remaining debts so I can have legal separation from that entire mess. You did all that in 3 days? I did all that in 3 hours after you left my suite. His gray eyes held mine with uncomfortable intensity. Because losing you isn't an option I can accept. I'll burn every bridge, cut every connection, rebuild everything from nothing if that's what it takes to prove I'm choosing you. Completely. Without reservation. Tears threatened, but I blinked them back. That's too much pressure. I can't be responsible for you destroying your life. You're not destroying it, you're saving it. He pulled me closer, until our foreheads touched. My life before you was carefully constructed emptiness, expensive and hollow. You make everything real. You make me want to be better than my father's legacy. I'm scared, I admitted, the words barely audible. Scared of losing myself in your world. Scared of complications I don't understand. Scared of caring this much about someone I've only known 2 weeks. I'm terrified too. His confession matched mine. Terrified that you'll decide I'm not worth the risk. That my past outweighs our present. That you'll choose safety over the beautiful, messy thing we're building. We stood there in the stable, surrounded by the scent of hay and horses. Luna Rosa's peaceful breathing providing gentle percussion. The afternoon sun slanted through gaps in the walls, painting everything gold. If I do this, I said slowly, if I choose you despite everything, I need promises. Anything. Complete honesty. No more omissions. No more protecting me from ugly truths. I promise. And I keep my independence, my photography, my studies, my life separate from yours even as we build something together. I promise, though I reserve the right to support and encourage aggressively. A small smile tugged at my lips despite everything. And you accept that I come with complications too. Student debt, unstable income, family that doesn't approve of my choices. I'll love every complicated piece of you. He kissed my forehead gently. Your debt is our problem to solve together. Your unstable income gives me opportunities to create legitimate work for your skills. And your family will learn to accept you when they see how happy you are. You make it sound simple. It's terrifying and complicated and probably a disaster waiting to happen. His almost smile appeared. But I'd rather have complicated disaster with you than perfect emptiness without you. I pulled back just enough to search his face for deception. Found only honesty that matched my own fear and hope tangled together. Okay, I whispered. Okay, we try this. But if you lie to me again, I won't. He cut me off with a kiss, gentle and desperate and full of promise. Never again. I swear it. We kissed in the stable's golden light, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of horses and afternoon breeze, tasting salt from tears neither of us acknowledged. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine again. Come to Tuscany with me, he said quietly. When your photography contract ends next week, come see the stables, meet the horses, see if you can imagine building a life there. I have school in Milan. Tuscany is 2 hours from Milan. You could commute, or we could arrange housing closer to your university. His hands framed my face. I'm not asking you to abandon your dreams, Iris. I'm asking you to let me support them while we figure out this thing between us. The offer was enormous, terrifying, perfect. What would I do in Tuscany besides be your girlfriend? Be the veterinarian my stables desperately need? Be the photographer who documents our breeding program? Be the woman who transforms my hollow empire into something with heart and purpose? His gray eyes held mine with absolute certainty. Be yourself, in all your complicated glory, while I love you the way you deserve. Luna Rosa snorted softly, as if offering opinion on the proposal. I laughed despite tears still threatening, the sound mixing relief and terror, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. 1 month, I said finally. Trial basis. I finish my photography contract, then come to Tuscany for 1 month. If it works, if I can maintain my identity while being with you, then we talk about long-term plans. Deal. He sealed it with another kiss, deeper this time, full of promise and possession. Though I should warn you, I'm very good at making trial periods become permanent. Arrogant, confident. His smile was pure mischief. There's a difference. We left the stable hand in hand, Marco waving goodbye with knowing expression. The drive back to the resort was different this time, charged with anticipation rather than anxiety, my hand in Nico's across the console like it belonged there. That evening, we had dinner at the Marina Cafe where everything had changed the first time. But now the change felt different, not beginning but continuation, not falling but choosing to fly. Tell me about your favorite horse, I requested over simple pasta and local wine. Not the most valuable or successful. Your favorite. His face transformed, softening with genuine affection. Dante. I named him after your rescue dog. He's a 3-year-old gelding, completely unsuitable for racing because he's too gentle. But he loves people with the kind of trust that breaks your heart because you know someone hurt him before he came to me. What will you do with him if he can't race? Keep him forever. Simple certainty. Some horses aren't meant for competition. They're meant for teaching humans about patience and trust and unconditional love. I thought about my own Dante, the 3-legged dog who'd taught me similar lessons. I'd like to meet him. Your Dante. He'll love you. Nico's smile was soft. They all will. You have this gift with wounded things. You see past the damage to their core worth. Maybe that's why I see past your complicated history to who you really are. He raised his wine glass in mock toast. To seeing past surfaces to messy truth beneath. To choosing mess over empty perfection. We clinked glasses, sealing promises spoken and unspoken, acknowledging the terrifying leap we'd both agreed to take. The rest of my week at the resort passed in a blur of photography and stolen moments with Nico. We walked beaches at sunrise, explored village markets in afternoon heat, talked until late night about everything and nothing. He showed me architectural plans for stable expansion, asking my input about veterinary considerations. I showed him my portfolio, letting him critique with surprising photographic knowledge. Isabella left after the 3rd day, her departure marked by cold glare in my direction that I met with steady confidence I'd earned through choosing risk over safety. On my final night at the resort, Nico took me to a secluded beach cove accessible only by boat. We swam in Moonlight, my borrowed bikini, red, always red now, floating around me like flower petals, while he watched with barely restrained hunger. "Who let you wear that?" he demanded when I emerged from the water, wrapping around me with possessive warmth. "You're not my owner," I replied, echoing my earlier defiance but softer now, playful rather than defensive. "Not yet." His mouth found the sensitive spot below my ear. "But I'm working on it." Presumptuous. Confident. He pulled back to look at me, gray eyes dark with desire and something deeper. "And completely certain that you're it for me, Iris. The one who changes everything." I kissed him instead of answering with words, tasting salt and moonlight and future possibilities. The wave that hit us pushed me tighter against him, his hands on my waist keeping me steady while the ocean tried to separate us. "I've got you," he murmured against my lips. "Always." And standing there in moonlight with Mediterranean waves surrounding us, his arms strong and steady around me, I chose to believe him. 1 month later, I stood in the main stable of Nico's Tuscan property, watching sunrise paint cypress trees gold, while Dante, the horse, not the dog, nuzzled my shoulder with gentle trust. My photography equipment sat ready to document the morning training session, but for now, I just stood, breathing in the scent of hay and horses and possibility. Nico found me there, wrapping around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Second thoughts? Constant thoughts. I leaned back into his warmth. But no regrets. Good. He kissed my temple. Because I have a surprise for you. Should I be worried? Probably. His almost smile warmed his voice. I contacted the University of Milan. They have a program that lets veterinary students do clinical rotations with private practices. I've registered my stables as approved site. You can complete your remaining requirements here while also working as our official veterinarian. The offer stole my breath. Nico, that's opportunistic? He turned me to face him. Creating openings you might not otherwise have? Absolutely. But also genuine solution that lets you pursue your passion while we build this together. I searched his face for manipulation, found only honest desire to support my dreams alongside his own. One condition, I said, echoing our conversation from weeks ago. Anything. You let me pay rent, or contribute somehow financially. I won't be kept. His expression softened. Deal, though I reserve the right to occasionally spoil you with things you won't let yourself buy. Occasionally overbearing. It's my love language. I laughed, the sound mixing joy and exasperation and deep affection. Then I suppose I'll learn to speak it. We kissed in the stable's golden light, surrounded by patient horses and endless Tuscan sky, building something terrifying and beautiful from mess and truth, and stubborn refusal to choose safety over passion. 6 months later, during a charity gala at a prestigious venue in Florence, I photographed Nico receiving an award for his conservation breeding program. He looked devastating in formal attire, powerful and controlled, every inch the successful businessman. But when he spotted me behind my camera, his careful mask dropped into genuine smile that was only for me. And in that moment, captured forever in pixels and memory, I saw truth beneath every performance. The girl who'd hidden behind lemon trees, performing invisible competence while secretly yearning to be seen, had found the man who looked past every barrier straight to her core. And together, we were building empire of horses and healing, of truth chosen over comfortable lies, of love earned through honesty rather than performance. It wasn't perfect. His family complications still surfaced occasionally. My student debt remained real and daunting. We fought about his overprotectiveness and my stubborn independence with passionate intensity that occasionally worried the horses. But it was real, messy, complicated, terrifyingly authentic. And standing in that Florence gala, watching him accept accolades while his gray eyes searched the crowd for me, I knew with bone-deep certainty that I'd made the right choice. I'd chosen to fly.